Does the Bible teach that the earth was created only 6,000 years ago? And does it really matter how old the earth is? Last year, when I reviewed the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum in Kentucky, I sat down with Answers in Genesis co-founder Mark Looy to discuss this very question. Well, a few weeks ago, I met up with Mr. Looy again at the NRB Christian Media Conference in Dallas, Texas, and I had the opportunity to ask him more about this subject. What's the big deal about the age of the earth and a literal interpretation of Genesis chapters 1 through 6? Here's what Mr. Looy had to say. And I'm here with Mark Looy from Answers in Genesis, and Mark Looy and I have actually met before last year at the Creation Museum, and he's Answers in Genesis, if you don't know, is the organization behind the Creation Museum and the giant Ark Encounter in Kentucky. And Mark, it's such a privilege to be with you again here at NRB.
Hey, thank you, Josh. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm glad you and your whole family visited the Ark and the museum last year.
Yeah, and my kids absolutely loved the attractions and learned a lot. And we're using some of the Answers in Genesis material for our children, even in our homeschool, and they love it.
Right, we produce curriculum too, and I'm glad you noticed that our attractions, the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, are very family friendly. They're not stuffy science museums. There's a lot of fun things to do, everything from zip lines to a virtual reality experience at the Ark. It is very much for the entire family.
So tell us a little bit about the purpose of the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. What's the goal?
Well, they are themed attractions, but they're not a frivolous amusement park. We want to answer the most asked questions people have about the Christian faith. And we do that at both places, like why is there suffering and death in this world if there's a God? What about creation versus evolution? Was there really a global flood and a real Noah's Ark? And we answer those questions for both the Christians, who need to be equipped to have an answer, but also for the non-Christian. And we have perhaps 30% of our visitors to the Ark are not Christians. So we have that opportunity not only to answer those most asked questions about Genesis, but we present the gospel. So first and foremost, as an apologetics ministry, we're evangelistic. We want to share the gospel at both the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, but also answering those questions that skeptics and Christians have about the accuracy of the Bible.
Yeah, now, so I think all Christians should agree with that purpose of sharing the gospel, but there's a division among Christians over the YoungEarth creationist model. And what do you think is the significance of holding to that YoungEarth 6 literal day creation model?
Yeah, there are even more divisions than that, unfortunately. There are people who are what's called theistic evolutionists. That is, they're Christians who believe that God used evolution. I used to be one of those, Josh. Through most of my schooling, I believed in a God, but I was going to public schools, attending science museums, watching National Geographic TV specials, and I thought the Bible could not be trusted because science was saying one thing that was contradicting, or at least what I thought was science was contradicting in Genesis, until I heard a speaker by the name of Dr. Duane Gish. Dr. Gish had a PhD from UC Berkeley in biochemistry, one of the finest universities in the world. He gave a lecture on the fossil record, and I tell you, within an hour or so after that talk, I pretty much gave up my evolutionary worldview. Now, he was starting to challenge my Christian faith. I was wondering, could the Bible really be trusted, because science, so-called, was saying one thing, and my Bible was saying another. So I was having, at age 17 or 18, kind of a crisis of faith. So it's an important reason to study apologetics for that purpose, because there's so many young people, Josh, nowadays who are in our churches, and they're learning things in school and in museums and other places that cast doubt on the authority and accuracy of the Bible. They're leaving the church in droves. So our Creation Museum, Ark Encounter, the curricula that your family use, give answers to give reasonable, defensible answers in our modern scientific age. And our scientists with PhDs from places like Harvard and other fine institutions, they exist to show that you can trust the Bible from the very first verse. And yes, there are some Christians who may be against evolution, believe in an old earth. I used to believe that until, number one, I looked at the Bible itself and added up the chronologies, and we think the best facts of science, properly interpreted, supports a young Earth of 6,000 years as opposed to millions or billions.
So you don't buy into the idea. A lot of Christians are going to try to take the Genesis account very figuratively rather than literally, in order to not be called, crazy by the evolutionist society, by the scientific community, if you will. Mm-hmm. You think that here we have all this evidence, scientific evidence, that kind of should help us as Christians feel confident in the literal nature of the first
we
few chapters
very
of
much
Genesis.
believe that science confirms Genesis. And Genesis is not written as poetry or allegory. It's written as historical narrative. So I take it literally, as opposed to some verses in the book of Psalms and elsewhere are clearly not meant to be taken as literal. I mean, the Bible talks about God having, we can find comfort under his wing. Of course, that's allegory or some type of symbolism. But the Bible is very clear about the historicity of how the earth was created, how many years ago, and we think that science confirms that as properly interpreted, and that's why we have those many PhD scientists on our staff to give us that credibility. Yes, we do get mocked by the secular world and even by some Christians, and I understand that because that's where I came from. So I can kind of understand if people have gone through an educational system and visit these museums and get bombarded in the media with evolutionary messages, if that's all they know, that's what they're going to accept. That's why our Ark and the museum, our radio program, the curricula exist to show people there is an alternative view of origins.
Wow. Now, last time we spoke, you had teased us that there was going to be big news coming out of the Ark Encounter, the Creation Museum this year. Have we gotten the big news yet?
Well, because of COVID, we're going to have to delay that big news just a little bit longer, Josh. Sorry about that. But coming out of COVID, there's been financial challenges. The cost of building things right now has skyrocketed. The cost of lumber, the cost of steel. So I was hoping by this time I could tell you the really big
But by this time, surely you can give us a hint.
Well, I can tell you what we're adding at the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. We're going to be building a Tower of Babel at the Ark Encounter site. Now, it's not going to be a pagan temple. We're not going to build it to the sky to reach into the heavens. But the Tower of Babel, that structure, that replica, will give us an opportunity to talk about all the different people groups, that's scattered after the Tower of Babel. Gives us an opportunity to talk about where did all the people groups come from. Not races. We don't like to use that word, races. And, what color perhaps were Noah, his wife, what color skin, and their sons and daughters-in-law. And we can help answer the question dealing with racism right there at this Tower of Babel. Yeah. We also have a scale model of Jerusalem as it might have appeared 2,000 years ago. Those are big things, but there's something even bigger coming that perhaps we can release to you in a few weeks.
Well, that alone is pretty amazing. So if we hear that everyone at the Answers in Genesis has come down with different languages suddenly, we'll understand what happened at the Tower of Babel.
No, it won't be that confusing. No.
But one last question. I know there's another new thing here at Answers in Genesis, relatively new, and this is Answers TV. Tell us a little bit about that. Is it a streaming service?
Yeah, it's a new streaming service. In fact, it was launched during COVID last year, and we needed that extra income because when the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum were closed by state order, we had a tremendous drop in revenue. But a Christian businessman came alongside us and helped us create this new streaming platform called Answers.tv, which generated subscriber revenue, which helped us get through a terrible 2020. So that was a huge blessing. Plus, we had another businessman help us build a virtual reality experience at the Ark Encounter. And through those two things helped us get through a horrible 2020. But I'm happy to report this year we may have our best best attendance at both the Ark and the Creation Museum as all this pent-up interest in travel has just resurfaced.
So Answers TV is an app. Where can people find it?
Yes, it's on all the major apps. Perhaps the best thing to do is go to our website. Maybe go to answersingenesis.org. That's our umbrella ministry website, and from there find out about answers.tv. Just look for the media tab at answersingenesis.org, and thank you for mentioning that. That's relatively new as well.
I'm looking forward to it because I know a lot of people are looking for ways to have the content of Answers in Genesis without always traveling to the Ark Encounter, and this is from New Hampshire. This is quite a drive. We can get down there maybe once a year at best. But
we have over 3,000 videos now on Answers.tv with subscribers in almost 190 nations. It's a great way to reach people wherever they are.
So a lot of our viewers probably are going to be looking on answersingenesis.com. You run into somebody who's got a question about some scientific thing, and you're trying to find an answer about, does it prove the Bible false? You can find it on Answers in Genesis.
Use the powerful search engine at answersingenesis.org on just about any apologetics.
Okay.
.org. Any apologetics question is answered right there.
All right. Thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Now, I really appreciate Mr. Looy taking the time to answer my questions, and I strongly endorse the Ark Encounter, the Creation Museum, and the resources at Answers in Genesis. What do you think? Is the Earth only thousands of years old? If so, why do mainstream scientists get it wrong? If not, why does the Bible seem to indicate that it is? Do you think the age of the Earth is an important subject? You know what I think. Now, let me know what you think and why in the comments below. Now, before I go, I want to sincerely thank you for watching this video. If you like this content, don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel and to see more content like this. And follow The Bible Explained on Facebook at facebook.com/The Bible Explained. I really appreciate the support. Also, I want to remind you that the entire Bible is ultimately about one thing: the redemption of mankind by Jesus Christ. You see, the Bible tells us that all men are sinners, and that we must pay for our sin against God for eternity in hell. That's definitely the bad news. But you see, the Bible is all about this one thing: the good news that Christ died to pay the penalty for our sin on the cross. Since your sin has been paid for by Christ, all that is left for you to do is to turn from your sin and accept His salvation by faith. If you've never accepted this gift of God by faith, won't you do that today? Leave a comment or send me a private message on Facebook, and I'll be happy to talk to you more about having your sins forgiven by Jesus Christ.